All right. Good morning. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, NextOppSocial family. Welcome to another live chat discussion here on the NextOppSocial channel. I am Richelle Wright Wilson, and as always, I'm joined by Joanne Buford. And today we're talking about entrepreneurial ecosystems. So diving in a little bit, daydreaming with us a little bit on ideal situations, what we see as the most effective or fertile ecosystems that they could look like for entrepreneurs, and thinking about that from beginning to thriving, right? From your idea to execution. So before we jump into that, as always, if you are watching with us here, either live or on the replay, please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an interview live or any of the incredible discussions we have here every week at NextOppSocial. And as I told you, Joanne, truthfully, I'm going to pass this right over to you and let you dive in a little bit since you broached this topic, but also just to help point our course of action a little bit. It's a little broad, and there's a lot of directions that I know we could talk about for several hours on this. So I'm gonna pass it over.
So yeah, I mean, it is a broad discussion, and it was a topic that was born out of conversations that I was having with, quite frankly, entrepreneurs who are like mentors to me. Individuals who are at the status where they were able to level up during the pandemic. They have foundation in place, they have working capital, they are enjoying growth. And as I was conversing with these business owners, I began noticing certain characteristics or certain things they had addressed or had done that allowed them to either deal with the brunt of it, or quite frankly, thrive during it. And I said to myself, what type of ecosystem would need to be in place where we literally have almost like an assembly line of entrepreneurs who are having that type of success, right? What would need to be taking place in the environment? What types of tools, what types of resources, what types of programming will be necessary? And, as I thought about it more and more and more, I said to myself, this would be an interesting topic to broach for NextOppSocial. And then, of course, what I'd be really interested in is hearing from those entrepreneurs who tune in, right? And even getting their feedback. So I think we oftentimes don't have literally the bandwidth to slow down and ask ourselves, what are the things that we need, right? You're just doing and solving problems and doing and solving problems. And so you don't even slow down to really ask yourself that question, right? Even when I think about the work we do here with Shelly, I mean, this is kind of the purpose of this platform, right? Besides to create community and give entrepreneurs a chance to congregate and share ideals. I can't wait to get back to more of that right now that the quarantine conditions are starting to subside. But also, what do we provide? What type of information and tools do we need to put out there? And so, I know the first thing that if you ask most entrepreneurs what's required, what do you need right now? They'll all say, I need capital, right? I need some loans, I need some grants, fellowships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where can I acquire credit? And as I was thinking about it, I said to myself, of course, access to capital is always going to be first and foremost, like that's the lifeblood of your business. But oftentimes, I think what we forget is when we talk about access to capital, we're not just talking about loans. Like, what process do you have in place to actually generate revenue? I love something that Ms. Tina Williams says all the time, right? She says people come into her office looking to acquire loans and looking to acquire grants and looking to acquire money from banks and microlenders, et cetera, et cetera. But the first question she wants to know is, how are you generating revenues in the first place? Right? Have you taken the time to go from ideation to actually understanding how to take your talents and skills, those things that you're most passionate about, and wrap it around an actual business plan, right? That allows you to put yourself in position to lean in and ask for monies for the services that you're rendering. And in my mind, that's one of the first things that a very effective entrepreneurial program, so to speak, or if we could kind of create an ecosystem that would be supportive, we would start there. Once again, what does that process look like? And I'm not just talking about the stuff that people typically think about, right? Okay, structuring my business, right? S Corp, LLC, C Corp, L3C, et cetera. Or what type of checking account you should open, or what type of business credit should you secure? I mean, literally, what is your operating system, right? What does it look like from the time you greet someone? What does your value prop sound like? How do you deliver your value prop? What tools do you use? And quite frankly, how do you execute, right? When I talk to business owners that are having tremendous success, those things are already in place. I mean, they're solid, they're locked in. When you look at the name of their business, or if you learn about them, it's crystal clear who they are, what their purpose is, what's their value prop, what's their product and services. And oftentimes, when I'm having conversations with business owners, they can't even tell me their mission and purpose statement. Like, the only reason they exist is to part people with their money, but that's not going to work. Right? People don't wake up in the morning thinking, how can I put money in your pocket today?
I wish.
Yeah, it's all about WIIFM. What's in it for me, right? And not as you as a business owner, but what's in it for the individuals whom you're conversing about. If someone meets you at a Panera Bread, or in the elevator, or you're doing your first 2 minutes of a Zoom call where you're getting introduced to each other, people speed date now on these Zoom calls. What are you going to share with someone to let them know that you're here to answer that question, what's in it for me? And I think first and foremost, we need programs, we need a greater emphasis on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree too, because, another question, I got this question from a business owner I work with, that one of her clients had asked her. He had recently sold one of his businesses for a lot of money, like a bigger platform bought it. And this is exactly what he wanted. And it was great. And now he was ready to go for round 2. Let's create the next business that, I want to get it up and running quickly. I want to get this working so I can, again, sell it again. Right. And his question was, who do I need and what do I need to get this moving right now? Like, what do I need to do? Right. And in that question too, she was kind of talking to me about it, and it's a large question, like, because there's not just one blueprint. So I think that's another thing that goes along with this, especially with capital. Everyone, you have this idea, right? You have this idea of what you want to do, and now you need to raise funds, or you need to get money so that you can execute this idea. But are you skipping the blueprint phase too? Are you skipping the planning phase? Not just of like, okay, you understand the basics around, I'm going to sell this and revenue is going to come in because I've sold this. But there's not a one size fits all, especially now in how you go from your idea to execution, right? And I would argue, especially depending on what you're building and what you're doing, there are things and avenues that you take and that you don't. Especially now in the digital age, of that's sometimes a crux and a plus, where we have a lot of options around that. But trying to skip this blueprint process, right? Of, what am I going to need and who am I going to need, and what, that's the other thing I think that goes along with capital. We sometimes, again, depending on what it is, if it's a big tech startup, that's, things are different. But I think we also sometimes we overcomplicate and overestimate how much money we actually need to get things up and running too. If you can sustain, there are pluses, there are ups and downs to, raising money, and whether that's in your favor or not, or whatever, that we're not going to get all into that. That's a much more complicated Shark Tank style conversation. But I think we you want to get this, you get excited about this idea up and running. And I think what's really important is making sure that you are taking some time to talk to people who've either done it before, people who know the people you need to know. I think that is so valuable than just trying to just hit the ground running, because you're probably gonna get a better plan in place, and you're probably also gonna avoid spending money and time on things that aren't worth your while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, oftentimes, like I said, it's like putting the cart before the horse, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, some questions that I think all entrepreneurs should be able to answer is number one, why are you in business in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
What are your core values, right? What's the end game here? What's really the impact you're trying to have, whether it be in your family, your community, society at large? What's the answer to that question, right? You know, the next question should be, what is the purpose of your business beyond just generating cash? What is the purpose?
Mm-hmm.
You know, once again, another way of answering the question, not to be redundant, but you need to answer this question for yourself, but you also need to answer this question for your business too. What is the purpose of your business? You know, a question that I've posed to entrepreneurs with regularity, and I kind of dialed it down a little bit, but I used to ask business owners, where do you want to be 10 years from now? So I dialed that down a little bit, right? Because I know sometimes that's too far off. It's too macro for them, right? Because they're only thinking about what's in front of their nose. But you should be able to at least ask yourself, where do you want your business to be 3 years from now?
Yeah.
Right. In terms of scale, in terms of revenues, in terms of impact, even in terms of your role in the business, right? Do you want to be the center of everything? You know, because if that's you, that's okay. Restaurant owners are like that, right? They can't imagine not being in a restaurant, many of them. I mean, they want to be in it. You know, it's an experience. Same thing for a lot of creatives, right? But if you're running a construction company, or quite frankly, even a B2B organization or a graphic design company, et cetera, maybe that's not the role for you, right? Maybe you really want to occupy the role of a CEO or chairman in the sense that, yeah, the macro you're dealing with, you're determining direction and whatnot, but you're not involved in the daily operations every single day. What does that look like for you? Because if you can answer those questions, that's a better way of getting to the heart of, okay, now what resources do I need, right? Yeah. Even if you ask yourself, where do I want to be a year from now? That will help you better define whether to go out and spend $3,000 on a contact manager or bootstrap it. I'm just being real, right? That will define, do you just need a landing page or do you need a full-blown state-of-the-art website, which for most business owners is not necessary when you're first starting out. Not in this digital age when most people, quite frankly, are going to social media first to check you out anyway before they even look at your website. Your website for most businesses, it's just your business card. It's a signal to people that you're a grown adult business. Look, trust me, most people are not making decisions as well not to conduct business best on your website. They've already made that decision before they've gotten to your website. They go to your website for confirmation or to make a buying decision, right? So what are these questions that need to be answered, right? You also said something that caught my attention as well. And Mark Cuban says this a lot, right? What's the end game? Begin with the end in mind. In the real estate industry, this is huge, right? What's the disposition process going to look like? You know, you acquire the home, you repair the home. Now, how are you going to get this home from out of your portfolio and generating capital? Well, it's the same thing with your business, right? You need to have certain things in place if you want someone to even consider investing in your business. Or once again, the end game could be passing on to a family member. The end game could be making sure if I get disabled, if I get sick, I'm not able to operate the business, it still goes. The end game could be maybe you want to sell it, right? If you don't have an operating system in place, so if you don't have an operating agreement, a partnership agreement, if you don't have non-circumvents and non-competes, if you don't have an employee handbook in place, if you haven't installed a system, no, you're basically running a mess. That's what you're running. Like you're like a baby still wearing your diapers. And you know the one thing about adults and parents, yeah, we don't mind cleaning our children's diapers, but not indefinitely. I've never met a parent that's gleeful about cleaning up shit out of a diaper. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you're basically leaving people when you have your business structured like that. You want your business to be grown up. You want it to be an adult, right? People want to do business with adults. That's kind of like the anecdote or metaphor I would utilize. You want to have these systems in place because if you're going to sell your business, you're not selling you, you're selling an organization.
Right.
Are there systems in place? Do people understand their roles and responsibilities? Are these things clearly delineated? Are the accounts organized? Are things synchronized? Is this a system? Right? And this also determines your readiness for capital, right? The banks have tightened up. The games people play even a year ago, you can't do that anymore. Private investors are also tightening their belts, right? They're taking closer inventory of this stuff because the pandemic basically scraped everyone one way or the other, right? So if you're a small business owner leveling up, these things that you, while you're busy chasing capital or trying to make a quick buck, you better be putting these things in place. And it's a conversation that doesn't happen often enough, right? A lot of business owners were wiped off the face of the earth because of the pandemic because they weren't able to answer these questions. And because these questions weren't answered, there was no contingency plan, right? What happens if my revenues are cut by 30, 40%? You better have that in the back of your mind. It can happen, right? As we just discovered, because there's a pandemic. In my mind, I feel like there's some type of financial or business pandemic every 10 years. That's been my life experience. I remember 2000 when I was an investment advisor and experiencing that. I remember 2008 when I was finally at a point where I was beginning to operate and grow my own practice. And I remember 2008 and what it did. And then now we have what? 2020. Well, guess what, everybody? In another 8 to 10 years, it's going to happen again. It's going to be something. And what are the structures that you're going to have in place so your business can thrive despite it all, right? And what ways are you going to grow your business? And, I got a laundry list here, so I'm going to press pause.
Well, and let's look at even from the other angle, right? The the non-fearful side of it, the non like, oh shit side. Something's going to go wrong. You're an entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur, you've started this business, there's a level of budding creativity that's always in you. There's a level of excitement of starting new things, building new things, having your hand or foot or whatever into other, creative endeavors. I don't care what you're doing, right? When you start, especially getting to a point where when you're able to like outline and understand why you started this business, what this business is going to grow into, to assume and think that you're not going to want to do other things, or you're not going to have interests in other things, or you're not going to want to be involved in other things as they grow, is kind of silly, right? To think that you're just going to do this one thing till you die, right? So even from that avenue, having these plans in place gives you freedom. It gives you freedom to pursue other opportunities that are going to fulfill you in the same way that your business did 3 years ago, 5 years ago, right? And not only that, they grow your network, they grow your net worth, they grow all those things. If you're, especially if you're in this entrepreneurial life till death do you part, the idea that is not feasible, right? So you need to also create these systems and processes for yourself to open your opportunities, to open up your
journey is credit, right? I never thought much about it because I was always generating revenues. And so I never thought about utilizing other people's money. I never thought about any of those things. And that's kind of the mindset that you have when you're a micro business owner, which is a team of me, right? Because everything is just an extension of you. But, you hit the nail on the head. Once you start realizing, okay, I want to start saying yes to more things, that means you got to build a team. You got to go from a team of me to a team of we. And then credit becomes very important. Whether it's acquiring working space, whether it's acquiring equipment, whether it's acquiring resources to make payroll in a down month, these things become absolutely imperative, right? Credit is a huge thing that, as I was talking to these business owners that once again were able to survive and even thrive, the one thing they had in common is they had a surplus of credit available to them. Personally, and in terms of their business. And if their personal credit went in the toilet because maybe they took a haircut financially, their business credit was still there. So they were still able to pay the bills. They were still able to pay their employees. They were still able even to invest in their business and create processes, right? In an environment of scarcity and grab up some market share and take up some space that other people that, they had to give up because they weren't in business anymore. In an ideal world, I would love to see more courses, more classes, more individuals being taught that. I think that's so absolutely imperative. The other thing I think about too is when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, this is the part of the game that people don't talk about, right? And that is oftentimes the biggest difference between those entrepreneurs who succeed and those who don't, is the ones who succeed aren't afraid to get punched in the face. You know what I'm saying? Like, face punches, no thing. I fail. Okay, I learned a mistake, brush myself off, get up and go again. There's a lot of psychological and mental and emotional dexterity that's required to be an entrepreneur. There are some conversations you need to have with yourself. There are some conversations you need to have with your family. There are some conversations you need to have with even your friends and those people who are closest to you about the endeavor you're in. You got to get yourself psychologically ready, because you're going to get tested. You're going to get stretched. You're going to get pulled. And look, I know people are normally like, Juan's so positive, but but I also am acutely aware of the fact that a lot of entrepreneurs just aren't ready for what they're going to have to endure when they first launch. And that's why most people quit, right? Because they just weren't ready. They're looking at the YouTube video, looking at the Facebook videos, because you chose entrepreneurship. All your problems can be solved, and money's going to fall from the sky like manna. And everybody's going to roll up on you because you're to offer the best product and service on the face of the earth and give you their money. No. Okay. It just doesn't work that way, And so, I know pursuing the services of psychologists and therapists is becoming more and more popular nowadays, for people who are having personal challenges. But I also believe you need those type of resources around you as well, or at least have mentors who understand emotional maturity to kind of help coax you through these things also.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree.
The other thing, that I just feel so fortunate, right? Part of it is just longevity, just being around long enough, right? That's a huge part of being in business. Sometimes just being around long enough is how you achieve success, right? Enough people know who you are, they know what you do, you become a quote unquote trusted brand. But literally the fact that I was able to pick up the phone yesterday and talk to someone who's managing a multi-million-dollar enterprise, right? I would love to see a situation where, very similar to what we're doing here, but even maybe on a broader scale, where people could literally have access to individuals who are building, have access to individuals who are actually grinding and creating success stories and scaling their businesses. Now, it's a catch-22, right? I always joke about the people who are online, it seems like all day, every day, selling their books and selling their seminars. Like, you're not real business owners. You don't have time to be a business owner because you're selling this crap all day long. You just don't. People who are grinding, people who are building, people who are scaling, they don't have time for that stuff. Straight up. They don't, because they're in the dirt. You know what I'm saying? But if we could find a way to make it more attractive, to get those individuals, even if for 30 minutes, to say, look, this is how I did it, right? And even make them accessible, be able to ask the questions that you want to ask, that you can't ask when you're listening to a podcast, that you can't ask when you're watching a YouTube video. If there was a way or some type of systemic program that was in place where you could be introduced to those individuals, even if it was just once a month, but you could be in the space with them, that would be so powerful. And I think about that, in an ideal world, in an ideal healthy ecosystem, you'd have that type of accessibility.
Yeah, I think that social media has helped with that accessibility to a certain extent for those who have been willing to share more around that. They do, and they
Mm-hmm.
do a little more now than they did before, just
Mm-hmm.
because um the idea of you're perfectly curated, everything's perfect,
Mm-hmm.
social media, it's not that it's not that that went away, but it's that
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have some transparency and honesty a little bit inside mixed in that as well, you're going to fall flat. I
Mm-hmm.
think there are platforms like, like Clubhouse or sometimes even TikTok or like Instagram Live or stuff like that, where people kind of they can approach these a little bit more unfiltered with that. But I think what happens when I get lucky enough to land on someone who is willing to be honest, right, and like and talk
Mm-hmm.
about that journey, if when I heard those conversations, 5-6 years ago, as opposed to listening to those conversations now, and if I think about a new entrepreneur who's going to sit there and listen to someone saying like, okay, here's how I did it, that answer is going to stress them out. That those answers, like, here's how I did it, you want to know how I did it? I worked my ass off,
Mm-hmm.
right, and I made a lot of mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you get a lot is like, well, I did this and it failed, and I did this and it failed, and I did this and it failed, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like you can hear, and it's one thing to listen to that story, especially looking at someone who's now successful, but start internalizing that story. Are you ready for 10 failures before you get successful? That's a hard
Mm-hmm.
pill to swallow, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think about in that my own respect. My right outcomes, all of this has evolved, right? It's evolved, and I have gone through a lot of dips where I didn't have it quite right, and it was not reflecting quite right, in my work or in how I was able, just trying to acquire people to like be clients and whatnot in my
Mm-hmm.
audience. But yeah, there's something, part of that story too is also like, well, I kept doing this thing consistently and I believed in this thing in this way, and I did nothing else but this thing for this long, right? And that's another thing that I think that as a society, when you stumble on someone now who's successful, you like, it's not that it's going to take you years and years and years, that's the only way to become successful.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a lot of time. It does take a lot of time and work. Things take time. Are you willing to invest that sort of time? So, I think, yes, I agree that listening and having these frank conversations and discussions are valuable. And I really do also wish that more successful people would not be concerned around telling those stories, because
Mm-hmm.
you can tell those stories all day. That doesn't mean anyone's going to take that action,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because also, again, it's like you hear that story and you're listening to the plot of like, oh, the hero's struggle, and you're waiting for the time when they succeed, right? And you're like, oh, that's how that they succeeded, right? But are you willing start internalizing some of those struggles a little bit and think, that's what's going to take for you sometimes too. Not everything is
Mm-hmm.
going to be nail it out of the park. I have clients, especially in the past year, who had to pivot, shift, adjust what they were doing to reach even the same audience that they already had. But these people weren't either to invest in that certain way, or they needed what they did presented differently, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
people would keep buying. But especially, like, let's say I was taking someone who was working one-on-one with people who now needed to shift to selling courses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That you can't just assume that we're going to knock it out of the park with this course right off the bat. Your audience is not used to that. Your audience
Mm-hmm.
is not ready for, wasn't aware that you were shifting gears. Just because you're in there doesn't mean anyone else paid attention to that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if it doesn't become extremely successful the first time, that doesn't also mean it's a failure either. Right. It means you got to keep there. You need time. People need time to digest what you're doing. People need time. Also, I think now people really need time to see if you're going to last.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to stick it out even when it sucks? Like there's a lot of businesses that you could hop into. Oh, this is hot right now. We talked about this with masks like almost a year ago. Oh, all these masks. And it's not to say that people aren't buying masks, but are people buying masks at the capacity they were even just a year ago? Absolutely not. Right. And that's going to probably, I would imagine, continue to dwindle. Right. And it was a hot business for a second, but if that was it, if that was all you were going to do, it's time to pivot. It's time to pivot. Right. Right.
Oh, that's understatement. But this goes back once again to making sure that your business has a purpose. You know, I remember chuckling. I just remember laughing so hard when I would see these like thematic masks and with the glitter and all kinds of, I was like, oh my God. I mean, you were hot for a second. Anyway, something else I think about, right? And you touched on this in the beginning. The average small business owner just starting out. Like I remember when I first decided, okay, I'm going to pivot. I want to go from being self-employed, working within a corporate structure, starting up my own enterprise, right? And I remembered as I was working out my business plan did not call for a $500,000 infusion. It's not what it called for. It didn't call for a $200,000 infusion. I knew enough people. I was creative enough to figure out ways to bootstrap and then acquire the things I needed. Whereas quite frankly, $10,000 at the most would have been enough to get the process underway, right? Maybe at the most $20,000. And that's where that's that unique space in between, right? Because if you have decent credit, you may have a credit card with $3,000 or $5,000 on it, right? So most people can kind of quickly get their hands on something, even if you have to do a eBay sell stuff that you have, you get your hands on $2 or $3K, right? You get mow some lawns, fix a couple vehicles, something, right? And of course, most banks aren't going to even look at you unless you're coming in through the door, the capacity to secure a $250,000 loan, right? Most micro lending organizations, I mean, unless you're not ready to come in there and secure a 50 or 100,000 above, right? But that space in between that 5, 10, maybe even 15,000, if there were more opportunities to secure capital in that space, right? Where you didn't have to go to a hard money lender where they're going to hit you up for 10% more the cost to acquire monies than somewhere else, right? That's something I think would be great. Like I remember when I was reading My Life to my daughter years ago, right? And there was a chapter in there, Bill Clinton's My Life, clarification. There was a chapter in there where he was talking about markets in Africa and how you have these business owners that basically circulate monies by lending literally small loans to each other. Not anything big or gargantuan, but something just to get someone started or get someone through a skinny period. And that's how those markets work. And that's why they were so resilient. Good economy, bad economy. They were so resilient because there was capital flowing through all the time. It wasn't a necessity. No one needed a million or 10 million or $20 million. They just needed a little bit, right? And more resources that provide, I guess, that bridge, if you will, I think will be so helpful to most business owners right now, especially when you're first starting out. I think about that a lot.
We're in a fortunate time where some of that is a little bit available. Granted, most of it is available to existing businesses. But I wouldn't be surprised if that starts to evolve, right? To bring in new life again because other things have shut down or starting to shut down,
Yeah. And I mean, there's resources. I mean, there's a couple online resources, Kickstarter and some other programs and platforms like that where you can do it. But you can never have enough, in my opinion, of those type of programs. So I think at the end of the day, that's usually the difference between someone launching and not launching an endeavor. It's that $5,000, $10,000 mark, right? So I think about that in terms of having a healthier ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I think would be very helpful for a lot of business owners is, and I mean, this goes without saying, we've all encountered bureaucracy, right? When dealing with the state. In my opinion, Michigan's not that difficult to deal with when it comes to bureaucracy. But when you start getting down to the county and sometimes on a city level and getting access to records and information, the sooner that more of the counties and more of the cities can get online and make more and more of that information accessible, as opposed to having to drive 30 minutes and then walk around for 2 hours to get your hands on some information, the easier it's going to get. Also, and this is just something that burns me up right now. It's something that's really igging me more than anything right now, is I'm having conversations with startups and it's just so much misinformation out there. It drives me crazy when I talk to a business and I'm saying, hey, you got your LLC? So they say, yeah. So, and now I've learned to ask, how did you set it up? Mm-hmm. Well, I went down to the county building and I got my DBA. I said, you do understand DBA and LLC isn't the same thing, right? That you actually have to go to the LAR website. You have to register in the state of Michigan. You take that CID number and you go to iris.gov, you get your EIN. You're still not an entrepreneur yet, by the way, but on paper, at least now you exist, right? Mm-hmm. And there are certain rules and guidelines and regulations you need to follow to keep your business in good standing and be healthy. But to me, it's even amazing that, I mean, particularly in the startup community, I would say for every 10 business owners I talk to, maybe 4 to 5 of them have gone about even that process wrong.
Yeah.
And to be transparent, I mean, I don't even know how to resolve that matter when it's that wide scale. Like, we need to have some type of process in place to kind of nets these people and gets them the correct information. I don't think you can rely upon the market privately to solve this problem, because the private market is causing this problem. Right. You have people out here charging people $100, $200, $500. I even know people are charging people $2,000.
Right.
To set up their business, and then they're giving them the incorrect instructions. That's insane. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree. And I think that also coincides with, even what you're talking about with these county, city, all those websites too, or just even that information. Like, I would say that some of those places have gotten better about, you can look up some things online, but good if you don't understand what you're looking at, and if you don't understand the verbiage and the navigation that they've created on their truthfully mostly archaic websites, good luck. Right. I had someone email me a link to Macomb County website and be like, you can check this here. And I got to the website. I'm like, where? I don't even know what I'm supposed to click on. Like, like there's nothing that's in plain English here either, of like, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know legal terms. Right. So it is problematic around that too. I think also we've hit this weird motion where everything is Googleable, but now we don't know what we're looking at. We're Googling if it's true. Right. And that goes heavily with business information. And I feel, I have a lot of this that happens too, misinformation in the marketing world of like, oh, I heard that I should do this and that's how I'm going to get this. And I'm like, I don't know who told you that. And I don't know where you saw that. And part of the problem is that it's very easy to present yourself as successful, even if you're not, right, online. And so then it becomes even easier to convince people that what you're saying is true, right? I think this is a much deeper conversation around all kinds of stuff, but I would see that a lot in the business terms. It's like, even with what we're talking about, right? Especially what we're talking about is because of lived experience. We've done this, we've seen this, we work through this with people. But that doesn't mean that everyone should just take what we say for face value. This is fact, a fact for everyone, or like you should feel confident that the people you're listening to, digesting information from, reading from, have done their work, right? That they can prove to you that they know what they're talking about. I think that's what's even more important too.
Yeah, you want to look for signs or receipts. You want to look for receipts, right? It's funny. I'm getting ready to have a coaching course on how to use LinkedIn to do that, right? In a couple of weeks. Yeah, it's a couple of weeks. And one of the things I'm going to emphasize is, look, you got to show receipts. Collect testimonies from other business owners. Collect testimonies from individuals where you put your hands on them. And as a result of you interacting with them, you brought about A, B, and C, D outcome, right? And oftentimes it's like you have a lot of people, and I'm not hating. It is what it is, man. To each your own. If you can sleep at night with what it is you're doing, so be it. That's why we live in a capitalistic system. So you kind of pick and choose, right, how you want to go about it. But you have a lot of individuals who are winning because they're popular, not because they're effective at certain things. And once again, it is what it is. But for those individuals who are seeking advice and guidance, look for receipts, right? The other thing that, I'm just frank. I've just gotten so sick of individuals in the marketplace out here. They've read one book, watched one YouTube video, and they're on their entrepreneur and dispensing advice. In the meantime, they're sitting at home and 90% of their income is still coming from a W-2. All right, so let me press pause on that. Keep it moving. But look, if you're not working 14 to 16 hours in the beginning when you're launching your business, if you're not putting in that type of business work in your business, I don't trust you. I just don't.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion like, I built my 6-figure business for 2 hours a day. I don't know how you did that. I don't know. How did you get into any process and flow? Even now.
I mean, it can. So you hear a lot about that in the network marketing industry, right? And there's a lot of different names for it. People call it MLM, you call it direct selling, whatever. Okay, the bottom line is I like to refer to as direct selling because that's basically what you're doing. You're selling direct, right? You are, quote unquote, eliminating the middleman and the commercials, blah, blah, blah. And it's even something that I talk frequently about with my team. So look, if you want to earn a couple $1,000, part-time, spare time, while you sharpen the saw and get better at the game and decide whether or not you want to level up and really make a run at this thing, that can happen for you.
Right.
But don't believe the hype. Don't believe the nonsense that you're going to put in spare time effort to get full-time results. Right. And it's going to happen in a year or two. That just doesn't happen. That's not real life. Right. And if it should happen to someone, see, this is important, right? So I was online last night once again because I was thinking about the conversation we're having. And I was looking at a lot of the business owners who I know who are legitimate, who actually built things, did things, right? They didn't just sell a book or, get online, become popular, dispense some information that may or may not have been verified, whatever the case may be. So I was paying attention to those business owners and how successful they've been. And one of them in particular is one particular podcast / YouTube channel. And admittedly, I was curious, right? It's a guy that does real estate, a guy that does investment advising, a guy that's an educator, and they're on there talking on a regular basis. And last night I was listening, and then I discovered that before they reach the pinnacle of success they have, where they have over 100 to 200,000 checking for them, well, these individuals were doing online marketing for 10 years. They were already doing online marketing. They were doing it on Instagram. They were doing it on these other platforms. They were effing up and having successes, but also having major flubs. And so, once again, for the entrepreneurs listening in, it was a reminder, even for me, that when you see individuals who are crushing it, don't discount the previous experience that they may have had, right? The years they may have put in. Maybe they already have marketing acumen. Maybe they attended school for marketing. Right. And that doesn't always get articulated. Maybe they worked for a company where they picked up 10, 15 years of experience in a particular industry, and then they launched their business. So it seems like it was overnight. right? It seems like they launched 2 years later, boom, they've blown up. No, they had years of experience. And that's how they were able to do it. Understand that transpires too. If most people who come to the direct selling industry, they join a company, and I'm speaking specifically direct selling industry. When you hear individuals who come to the industry and in 2 years they're multimillionaires, no, they had some other direct selling experience before then. Right. They were involved in maybe 2 or 3 other companies where they perfected the science, they understood the behaviors, the psychology, they learned the business model, they joined a particular company and they caught fire because it was the accumulation of experience. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's when that happens. If you're brand new to entrepreneurship, look, and let me say this. We're talking about mastery here. We're talking about becoming elite, right? If you're just trying to get by, totally different discussion. But if you're trying to become elite, build an asset or a business that's going to pay you more money than your bachelor's, your MA, or your PhD, right? And you're going to do it in business. You're going to put in your hours. You're going to put, as Malcolm Gladwell said in Outliers, you're going to put in your 10,000 hours. That's got to happen before you become elite at anything. I don't care if it's tennis, being a violinist. I don't care if it's sprinting or even in business, right? There's no getting around that. So don't get it twisted. And that's a conversation needs to happen too. And yeah, I mean, I honestly believe that there needs to be more platforms, or if someone's matriculating through a particular program, that, yeah, someone is assigned with the responsibility of delivering the come to Jesus message. Because it just doesn't happen enough.
Yeah, you got to be willing to be a forever student to your own business, right? Mm-hmm. Forever willing to, again, we're talking about people who want to be elite in this, right? You have to be willing to just always know that there's more to know. There's more to do. There's more that can happen, right? And this is not to say you have to be the expert of everything that happens to make your business run. But you should know it inside and out. You should know how this operates and everything inside and out. You should. I don't want to use the word easy, right? But to a certain extent, some of this over time should start feeling like it comes naturally to you because you have put in that time and energy. You're not going to find any craft where you can't. There's always child prodigies who can do things, whatever. They're just born with these talents sometimes. But like, you know, think of myself as a pianist. Like if I don't practice, my ability dwindles, right? If I don't consistently practice at my craft, I can't expect to sit down and I'll play Rachmaninoff when I haven't practiced in 6 months. Like why? You know, you have to keep nurturing that skill. It doesn't stop. And truthfully, I think that is also something that when I do hear some of the best entrepreneurs or like really well-respected ones who finally, break down like the realities of how they got there, at no point were they like, and then I was done. And then I got there and I'm here. Like they talk about what they're doing now, what they've had to keep doing. If you're hearing someone being like, and then I made it. No, like they don't say that. They don't say that because they know that in order for them to continue that success, to continue that momentum, they have to keep going. It has to keep going at some level.
Yeah, and you said something that caught my attention, right? When you talk about child prodigies.
Yeah.
Understand that the soil still had to be fertile for them.
Yeah.
Like someone may be a child prodigy pianist, but there's no piano in the house.
Right. There has to be the encouragement. There has to be the, yeah.
And I think that's something else that we can't have enough of in a healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that's masterminds. That is spaces where entrepreneurs can come without being punished for their failure or for going through the ugly duckling stage and literally beta test, converse, and share their ideas, right? You can't have enough of those type of spaces. You know, when I listen to some of these gurus And some individuals who are putting on these programs, I'll hear them complaining, well, I don't want to deal with this rudimentary stuff anymore. I just want to deal with entrepreneurs or that are on this level where I'm at. And I'm listening to them, I'm like, don't pretend like you didn't start there. Right. Don't forget your ugly duckling stage. You started somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And so spaces where there is fertile ground and fertile soil, which means there's encouragement, there's information, there is the real space to fail and go through your ugly duckling stage, to ask questions you don't know. I don't think there's anything, any such thing as a stupid question. There's just level of ignorance, what people know and don't know, right? Mm-hmm. You can't have enough of those spaces. And I know, of course, people who make a living doing masterminds and creating these environments, like, yes, you can, you all come to mind. But every space is not for everybody either, mm-hmm. And you said something else that caught my attention too. Like, there's no silver bullet. There's no, this is the way I did it and mirror the way I did it. Because we all come to the table with different life experience, different skills. Once again, we all come from different environments. We've all been shaped in terms of our self-concept differently. And so while there are lessons to be gleaned, you need to understand that sometimes you just simply need to eat the fruit and spit out the seed, right? The things that are for you are for you. Apply them, adapt them to what you're doing, acculturate them to your process. But there are some things that just may not be applicable to you. It doesn't matter how successful that person is, right? Mm-hmm. That's why it's so important to draw mentorship, not just from one person. It kills me when I talk to someone who says, I got this one mentor and they are just God. I'm like, okay.
Go find some more.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it's not existent. There's no omnipotent mentor out there. You need mentors to help you with different things. And in a healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem or programming, you have people being exposed to a multitude of experiences and perspectives. And in my mind, you just can't have enough of that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, final thoughts. Final thing. Yeah, we got.
Yeah, I'm looking at the time. Like, oh my goodness.
Our final thoughts. Yeah, I think if you're someone who's looking for more support, you're looking for more guidance, you're looking for more informed education, this isn't just as a plug for what we do here, but I want to re-emphasize that, especially if you're watching and listening to this one, there's a good handful of our discussions that are just you and me, but there are a lot of discussions, and the biggest part of this platform are the interviews we have. You and I do not claim to know everything, and we make sure that we find the people who do and can tell it to you bluntly, can tell it to you in a way that you will be able to understand and take action with. That we're almost at a year here of discussions. We're almost like there's 50 discussions here, right? So think about, look at some of these videos, just because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even understand how much more quickly you're going to move through something when you do have that right knowledge and information. Time is money too, right? So skip the line, find the expert, and call it a day a little bit.
I guess the biggest lesson I would impart, and I guess part of it is because of the discussions I'm having right now, which is why I'm so on fire about this. Self-concept. Slow down to speed up. Get your head right. You got to get your self-concept right. If you see yourself and you believe that you are going and that you are building a business with $100 million valuation, you treat that business differently. You operate differently. You build differently. You structure differently. You make different decisions. Versus if you are just building a business to just skate by and survive. Right. And, let's go back to this again. Because, I see it as two sides of the table. You have one side, business owners who thrived and crushed it during 2020. Right. And I'm going to keep telling that story because more people need to know this.
Yeah.
right? You didn't crush it in 2020. Don't blame the market, blame you. This is entrepreneurship. We don't do excuses in entrepreneurship, right? We don't wake up and try to breathe, we breathe. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you fail, you got to take it on the chin. If you win, you get to take that too, right? But so there are businesses who failed, there are businesses who succeeded. And one of the commonalities that I learned from the business owners that thrived, succeeded, and continued to scale was their self-concept, right? Despite the pandemic, in their mind, I'm building a business that's worth $100 million. In their mind, failing was not an option. It does not matter if I'm down to my last dollar. It does not matter if I need to sell my car or last bit of clothing on my back, which some of them did.
Mm-hmm.
To right the ship. But I'm building this. Their self-concept was so high that they made different decisions. They behaved in different ways. And as a result, they came through even stronger. And so to the extent that you can read books, podcasts, talk to entrepreneurs, going to give you straight talk to get you to get your self-concept right in terms of what it is you're building, defining your purpose and your impact. You got to slow down, speed up. You got to deal with that. Because if you haven't dealt with that, even if you build a business that does $1 million, water
it's going to catch up with you. Yeah.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That will be what I would impart.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Until next week, share this with anyone who needed this wisdom, maybe this wake up call for themselves as well, as we kind of talk towards the end, our come to Jesus moments. But also, anyone who, and like we talked about in the beginning, we'd love for you to comment below and share your thoughts. What do you feel is missing in the entrepreneurial ecosystem that you wish you had in retrospect, or you wish you could find